experience. It plugs into the future. It's for everyone. Coming to you soon.
Hello and welcome to Replay Retro. I'm Matt, and on this week's show we're going to take a look at the 3DO interactive multiplayer. In 1993, Trip Hawkins, the former chief executive of Electronic Arts, launched a bold advertising campaign telling us it was time to put away our Sega and Nintendo toys and start playing with something real. 3 years earlier, as the Mega Drive market started to fall to the power of the Super Nintendo, Trip had realised that backing a particular platform was a risky business for any games developer, and he came up with the idea of creating a standardised gaming platform. Using this system, several companies could produce hardware, but games for the systems would all be compatible with one another. This would make it easier and cheaper for both developers and consumers. With big-name investors such as MCA and Time Warner on board, Trip announced the 3DO format, and in October of 1993, Panasonic launched the first 3DO player, known simply as the Panasonic FZ-1. This would be followed 1 year later by versions from Sanyo and Goldstar, as well as a new, much cheaper FZ-10 console from Panasonic, all of which were fully compatible with all 3DO games and controllers. The lack of games revenue for the system manufacturers meant that the launch of the FZ-1 system was marred heavily by its PS3 busting price tag of $700. That's more than 3 times the price of the Super Nintendo. It also suffered with a very limited games lineup composed mostly of dated interactive movies such as Night Trap and Dragon's Lair. However, those games that did take the plunge were eventually rewarded with incredible games like Wing Commander 3 and the first instalment of the now legendary Need for Speed Racing series, as well as fantastic next-generation versions of EA's sports titles like FIFA. These games proved that the system was more than capable of leaving the Nintendo and the Sega systems in the dust, but still weren't enough to make Trip's console a commercial success. In 1995, when 3DO announced the system's successor, any remaining faith among consumers was lost, and it was too late for the vastly cheaper FZ-10 model to save the system from early retirement. The 3DO company would later go forward as a games developer, producing a number of fairly successful series, including Army Men and Battle Tanks, while the console itself was forgotten as the Sega Saturn, N64 and Sony PlayStation took control of the market. So, let's take a look at a 3DO FZ-1 system. So, this is the FZ-1 3DO console made by Panasonic, and as you can see it's quite a large system, but it's also very chunky and very solidly built, and when you do hold it, when you pick it up, it just feels very solid, very well put together, and built to last basically, as you would expect from a Panasonic device. At the front here you have the nice chunky power button there to turn the system on, and at the other side you have the open and close button for the CD tray, so you can put your games or whatever other discs into the system. The tray itself, as you can see, has a nice solid mechanical motion as it moves backwards and forwards, which is impressive for a system that's 17 years old to still have that. Also on the front here you have the controller port. As you can see, there's only one controller port, and that's because the controls for the 3DO did something that I think is actually quite an innovative little feature. Basically, here's a Panasonic controller. Basically, you would plug the first controller into your system, like that, and then the controller for player 2 would be plugged in to this little socket here on the back of that controller. Player 3's controller would then obviously be plugged into the player 2 controller, and so on and so forth. So you don't need a multi-tap, which is a really great, way of doing things. It saves the gamer money again. On the controller, you'll see the buttons are labelled like a media player, because remember, the 3DO was meant to be more than just a games console. This was to be a media system as well. You have your D-pad there, nice solid D-pad. 2 trigger buttons at the back, and 3 main buttons, as well as the equivalent of your start and select buttons there. On the bottom, another quite cool feature for the time was the ability for you to plug headphones into your controller, so you could listen to the sound directly through those, and there's a little volume control there that controls the volume through to your headphones. Moving to the side of the console, you can see the AV expansion port here, which is where the MPEG card device would be attached to the system to enhance the video playing capabilities of the 3DO. Then round at the back, you can see a composite video inputs there for your video and sound to your TV, or you can use an S-video link. Then over on this side here, you'll see this little expansion port, which was designed for using these memory units, which, like the memory cards of today, were purely to expand the storage for your game saves and other such material, such as your photos or anything like that you want to keep stored on this system. Just in case you start to fill the main memory, you have a nice big memory unit here. And again, the memory unit is nice and chunky, and it once again feels really solid. It's a well-made piece of equipment. So that is the FZ-1 model of the Panasonic 3DO. So now let's hook this system up and have a quick look at just a few of the games and see what it can do.
So this is Street Fighter 2 Turbo, a game which doesn't really need me to tell you what it's like. This 3DO version I think has the best intro sequence for Street Fighter 2. It's just really cool, very 90s, but also just it's so cool. Okay, so let's skip past now and get into the main game. We'll use Super Battle so we can get straight in. And because I'm hopeless, we'll go with Game Speed 1. And let's just pick Ryu.
Round 1, fight!
So straight away you can see that the graphics for this version are very sharp, very true to the arcade. The game plays really quickly and solidly on the 3DO. And the sound, again, is very arcade faithful. Some people have criticised the controls for being a bit stiff and for making it difficult for you to hit the heavy hit button, which is on the left bumper. But as you can see here, I've not really had that problem, so I can't agree with it. To me, the control system is good and solid for the game. Definitely my favourite version of Street Fighter 2.
You win!
Next up, we're looking at Poed. This is one of the worst games I've ever played, to be honest. But it does show the 3D capability that the 3DO could pull off. Basically, the premise of this game is you are a chef, hence the frying pan, who is lost in space. Yeah. Okay. The enemies here are so difficult to hit. This is ridiculous. Let's just run away from these weird red things. So one thing I do want to show you in this game. That's right. One of the enemies is a giant backside, and it actually shoots feces at you. That is wrong. Worst game villain ever. Much like Doom, obviously you do get better weapons as you go on. But obviously here we are at the beginning of the game, so we're stuck with the frying pan. And to cap off the rubbishness of this game, there is an enemy running into a pole. That's how bad the AI is. So next up we have Road Rash by Electronic Arts. Another really cool intro sequence for the game here, taking full advantage of the FMV capabilities of the system. You can see here that you've got two main modes. You've got big game mode where you upgrade your bike as you go along, earn money, that kind of stuff. And obviously thrash mode, which we're going to use, which is just the straight up racing game. Great start there by me, missing the accelerator. So So basically, in case you don't know, the premise of Road Rash is a motorbike racing game, only you can punch the other racers to try and knock them off. You can pick up weapons as you go along, like you can be swinging a chain maybe to try and knock someone off. And also the police are chasing you a bit like in a Need for Speed kind of way. Obviously I'm miles behind everyone because of my bad start. We really need to make a new Road Rash. I miss this game. This is a great game. I'm gonna hit that guy and punch way too hard. There you go, when you do fall off, you go scurrying back to your bike. In a very amusing little animation there.
It all started so simply. I had just finished my usual morning routine of nude funkercise, fired up the Barca Lounger, grabbed a quick bite to eat,
So the last game we're going to
and
look at
prepared
here
to watch
is
some
Gex,
serious tube.
which is a great platform game. I think
Little did
Gex
I-
is one of the underrated platform heroes.
Time to teach someone some manners.
I think people maybe thought he was trying too hard to be Sonic because of his whole attitude thing.
Yeah, this place does all the work of a Dick Clark special.
So obviously you pick your world here that you want to go and play in. There are 4 main worlds. First world, as you can see, is the cemetery. And within each world you have different levels. Let's just go straight into the first one here.
This reminds me of my last few dates. It's tail time!
Gex is a really solid platformer. He's got his tail as his main weapon, obviously, which you can also use to bounce to break things on the floor. And this extra thing of just being able to stick to walls it's just cool. It gives you a few interesting opportunities in the game. Unfortunately, it's very hard to play and talk about it at the same time. Can we get this? That's a little bit frustrating. There you go. The aim, obviously, is to collect these little fly things,
That's it. That's a spot.
which are the equivalent of Mario's golden coins, I suppose, really. Not Sonic's rings, because they don't protect your life, but definitely Mario's coins. And you're also trying to find remotes in the level, TV remotes, so that you can switch on the other levels. Eventually, Gex would go on to star in a few more games, including a great 3D title on the PlayStation 1, which is Gex Deep Cover Gecko. And that's a game I would definitely recommend. These little cameras are your save points. There you go. Just such a great looking game.
Well, in summary, the 3DO is actually a pretty good system and deserves to have done better than it did. However, its high price as well as tough competition from the already established systems by Sega, Nintendo, NEC and SNK left it without a market. That's all we've got time for on Replay Retro today. Join us again next week for more retro gaming reviews.